The world is witnessing a profound transformation, one that is quietly but surely reshaping the global economic and political landscape. At the heart of this change is a powerful alliance known as BRICS. This acronym represents a bloc of major emerging economies: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. Initially conceived as an economic grouping, BRICS has evolved into a significant geopolitical force. They represent a substantial portion of the world's population, land area, and economic output. Together, these nations are not merely passive observers. They are actively working to sculpt a new international order, challenging the long-standing dominance of Western powers. Their collective voice is growing louder, demanding a seat at the head of the table where the rules of global commerce and governance are written. The importance of BRICS cannot be overstated, especially as we navigate the complexities of 2025. This group is more than just a trading bloc. It is a symbol of a multipolar world in the making. For decades, the global system has revolved around the United States and its allies. But China, India, and other emerging economies are demanding change. The BRICS nations advocate for a more inclusive and equitable world order, one where developing nations, the global south, have a greater say in their own destinies. They see the existing structures, established in the aftermath of World War II, as outdated and unrepresentative of the current global reality. Amid the open calls for a new world order at the recent BRICS summit, a curious and notable event captured the attention of international observers: the deliberate secrecy surrounding Vladimir Putin's full speech. While other leaders broadcasted their positions with clarity and force, the Kremlin chose a path of calculated ambiguity. It released only a brief, carefully worded summary of Putin's remarks, which vaguely touched upon the need for enhanced trade cooperation and financial cooperation among the BRICS nations. This decision to withhold the complete transcript immediately fueled a wave of speculation and analysis, particularly in Western capitals, where every move by Moscow is scrutinized for deeper meaning, especially against the backdrop of escalating geopolitical tensions and economic sanctions. The mystery surrounding Putin's address raises a fundamental question: why the secrecy? In a forum designed to project unity and transparency among its members, Russia's decision to be opaque seems counterintuitive. One plausible explanation is that Putin's full remarks contained more pointed and confrontational language than the Kremlin was willing to publicize at that moment. Given the ongoing economic pressure from the West, including extensive sanctions and what Russia views as aggressive tariff policies from the United States, Putin may have delivered a speech intended for the ears of his BRICS partners alone. A candid assessment of the geopolitical landscape and a call for more robust, coordinated action could be perceived as provocative if made public. Despite the enigma of the Russian position, the overarching message from the BRICS summit was one of remarkable clarity and unity. The leaders of Brazil, India, China, South Africa, and Russia converged on a set of core principles that defined their collective stance. The central theme that echoed through their statements was a powerful defense of multilateralism. In a world increasingly fractured by go-it-alone policies and nationalist agendas, the BRICS nations positioned themselves as champions of a cooperative, rules-based international system. They argued that the world's most pressing challenges, economic instability, climate change, cannot be solved by any single nation acting in isolation. A second pillar of the summit's platform was a firm and direct pushback against protectionism. Leaders like China's Xi Jinping spoke forcefully against trade wars and tariff wars, which they argued severely disrupt the world economy and undermine international trade rules. This was a clear and thinly veiled critique of the aggressive trade policies enacted by the United States in recent years. The BRICS bloc argued economic globalization, despite its flaws, remains an irresistible trend of history. Retreating into self-imposed isolation is a path to economic stagnation, not prosperity. This stance places the group in direct opposition to the protectionist sentiment that has gained traction in parts of the Western world, positioning BRICS as champions of open, inclusive, and fair global trade. To fully grasp the significance of the BRICS summit's declarations, it is essential to understand the concepts of trade wars and tariff wars, terms that have moved from economic textbooks to front-page headlines. In simple terms, a trade war is an economic conflict where countries try to damage each other's trade by imposing restrictions. It is a form of protectionism where a nation seeks to shield its domestic industries from foreign competition. This is often done by using tariffs, which are essentially taxes placed on imported goods. When one country places a tariff on another's products, those products become more expensive for consumers, making locally produced goods more attractive. This is the opening shot in what can quickly escalate into a war. A tariff war is the most common form of a trade war. It typically begins when one country, let's call it country A, imposes tariffs on goods from country B, believing that country B is engaging in unfair trade practices or to protect a specific domestic industry. However, country B is unlikely to accept this passively. In response, it will almost certainly retaliate by imposing its own tariffs on goods it imports from country A. This back-and-forth cycle of retaliatory tariffs is the essence of a tariff war. The conflict can escalate rapidly, drawing in more products and industries, creating economic hostility. The BRICS summit was not just a forum for abstract discussions, it was a stage for powerful leaders to voice their clear and resolute positions on the future of world trade. Chinese President Xi Jinping emerged as one of the most vocal proponents of an open global economy. In a direct rebuke of protectionist trends, he asserted that hegemonism is getting more and more rampant, unilateralism is getting more and more rampant, protectionism is getting more and more rampant. He argued no country can truly thrive by retreating into self-imposed isolation. Economic globalization is an irresistible trend of history. Xi's message was a clarion call for the BRICS nations to stand at the forefront of the global South, jointly defending the multilateral trading system, opposing all forms of economic coercion, a clear reference to the tariff policies of the United States. Echoing this sentiment with his own characteristic passion was Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Lula has long been a champion of the global South. His return to the world stage has reinvigorated the push for a more equitable international order. At the summit, he declared that unilateralism will never conduct us to reach the achievements of peace, justice, prosperity. He framed the BRICS alliance as a new name of the defense of multilateralism, positioning the group as a vital bulwark against a new Cold War. When Xi Jinping concluded his remarks, he explicitly stated his agreement with President Lula's positions, declaring, "I'm sure we are all united on these matters." The BRICS nations are not simply criticizing the existing international trading order, they are actively proposing a vision for a new one that is fundamentally more open, fair, and inclusive. This vision is built on the principle of win-win cooperation, a concept that stands in stark contrast to the zero-sum mentality that often characterizes protectionist policies. The BRICS countries argue that international trade should not be a competition where one country's gain must come at another's expense. Instead, they advocate for a system where open markets and shared opportunities allow all nations, regardless of their size or level of development, to prosper together. This philosophy underpins their call to build an open global economy where collaboration, not confrontation, is the driving force. A central element of this vision is the strengthening and reform of the multilateral trading system, with the World Trade Organization at its core. While they criticize unilateral actions that bypass the WTO, the BRICS nations are not seeking to dismantle the institution. Rather, they aim to reform it from within. They argue that the WTO's rules must be updated to reflect the economic realities of the 21st century and to give a stronger voice to developing countries. Their goal is to ensure the organization serves as an impartial arbiter that benefits all members, not just the most powerful ones. While the BRICS nations are championing a future of open cooperation, they face powerful headwinds. The most significant challenge is the rising tide of protectionism unilateralism, especially from the United States acting outside traditional international law and institutions. This America-first approach, imposition of unilateral tariffs, initiation of trade wars, contradicts BRICS's multilateral principles. It creates uncertainty and mistrust, making global cooperation harder to achieve and maintain. Isolationism isn't just economic, it has deep political roots. Surge in nationalist and populist sentiment narrative blaming globalization for domestic problems, job losses, wage stagnation, leaders face pressure, defending local industries prioritizing national interests over open trade. Result, world turning inward, countries building economic walls instead of bridges. The weakening of key international institutions poses another significant obstacle. The World Trade Organization has been hamstrung for years with its dispute settlement system effectively paralyzed, encouraging powerful nations to take unilateral action. The outcomes of the BRICS summit and the group's growing assertiveness are destined to create significant ripple effects across the globe, fundamentally altering the positions of both the United States and the diverse nations of the global South. For the United States, the consolidation of the BRICS bloc as a coherent and unified economic and political force represents a direct challenge to its long-held position of global leadership. For decades, the United States has been the undisputed anchor of the international economic system. However, the coordinated pushback against its tariff policies and the calls for a new multipolar order signal that this dominance is no longer uncontested. The rise of BRICS means the United States must now contend with a powerful coalition that can set its own agenda and resist American pressure. This changing dynamic could force a strategic reassessment in Washington. As the dust settles from the recent summit, one conclusion is inescapable. The BRICS alliance is no longer a peripheral actor but a central force driving an inevitable transformation of the world order. The group's united stand in 2025 is not a fleeting diplomatic moment, but a clear indicator of a long-term structural shift in global power. The era of a unipolar world, dominated by a single superpower and its allies, is definitively drawing to a close.